opinion this year
Right.
for the general fund and the government-wide financial statements, which is all of your funds summed together on full accrual basis, except for the water and sewer fund. So we gave that to you this year. You went from a disclaimer opinion, which was basically all of the financial statements could not be opined on, or not, the auditors did not feel they could be reasonably stated at that time for last year at 2012. Now at 13, we felt like each of the funds, except for the general fund, which affected in those government-wide financials, all the other ones could be, except for that one, because of the wire transfers, the way they were being treated, the way the documentation surrounding them and what those wire transfers were actually being accounted for. GWA cleaned them up a lot from when they took over, but it's still, at the time of 2013, there was still too much that we could ultimately give an unqualified opinion for.
Okay.
Flipping forward a couple pages as you go through these financial statements, we have the MD&A section. This is essentially an entire summary of all of the rest of the financials. So if you want to flip through here to see if you're not getting something of what I'm saying, this would be the spot to go to, just to give you a high-level summary of it. After that is where the actual financial statements actually happen. The first ones are those government-wide financial statements that I was referring to on a full accrual basis, which would be capital assets and debt are both on the books, and all of them summed together. The numbers you would care about would be down here, the net position numbers. Ultimately, those government-wides had an $8.5 million negative net position at the time. But that takes into account all of your debt, which ultimately was a lot higher than the capital assets, which affected that number. Your money, your restricted, unrestricted money was at $4 million, which was a decrease from the prior year of $500,000.
Okay.
Looking forward is the fund statements that you're more accustomed to seeing when you're doing the budgets. One fund I'm going to point out to you is the general fund. Ultimately, your general fund had a negative $6.5 million position at the end of 2013. What that meant for the current year, for that 2013 year, was a $570,000 decrease.
Okay.
One more fund I'm going to point out to you is the water and sewer fund. Again, these are on that full accrual financial basis. You had $4.6 million of net position positive. 2.9 million of it was the cash portion, not counting capital assets. So a good position for the water sewer fund. That was all. How it performed during the year was a $1.3 million increase. So it was a good year here for the water sewer fund. You've been keeping up on that, keeping up with expenses. A lot of other areas have problems keeping up with the depreciation, and you've done a good job keeping up with that. The last funds I'm going to point out to you are the pension funds. They're also in here. This is the combined police and fire pensions. Ultimately, what these numbers don't mean a lot, it's how are you doing as a city funding them. At the time for police, there was a $56,000 net pension obligation, which was a drop, which was not what you wanted to cause it, I guess, to increase the obligation up to 56 by 20,000. And fire had a drop of 100,000, which made it a $42,000 net pension obligation.
Okay.
Those are two pretty good numbers, especially compared to some of your neighbors around here, but it's something to keep an eye on as you're looking at future budgets, that you're keeping up with what the actuaries are telling you to contribute. That is my financial statement presentation.
Okay.
Any
Questions?
on them?
Questions? Okay.
I know you get some strong detail in the management letter, so if you have any questions on either one, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
End of my report.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is law and ordinance.
Yes, I'd like to schedule my next meeting for July 23rd at 6:30 p.m. And I have an ordinance for removal of an ordinance for repealing the citywide hiring freeze. Is everyone comfortable with what was received from the attorney and the ordinance? Do I need an ordinance number?
Ordinance number 00715.
Okay, 00715. I make a motion for approval of the ordinance repealing, declaring a citywide hiring freeze.
Second.
What happened to the lights? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, it's, any questions? It's been properly motioned and second. Any questions?
Yes, I'll just make a statement as far as repealing of the hiring freeze. We did receive some information from Attorney John Murphy regarding the repealing of the hiring freeze and making sure that we didn't get any position as far as putting ourselves in any legal position to receive lawsuits due to the 2011 establishment of the hiring freeze. So based on his assessment, he feels that we will not be put in any legal position. From an HR perspective, we've already hired people. So we've already, put people in place without repealing the hiring freeze at this time. So, we as a council need to do what we need to do to make sure that we have people in place to do what's required of the city. However, we need to just monitor, what we're paying people and the qualifications of the people doing the job. And as residents, we need to come out as well and know what things are in your budget, what positions are in your budget, why they're doing what they're doing, and making sure that your alderman is held accountable for that information. That's my only statement on it, but.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, at this time, roll call.
Alderman Lockett.
No.
Lispy.
Yes.
Evans.
No.
Spivey.
Yes.
Okay. Because of the fact that we have a tie, according to the regulations and the ordinance, the mayor has the right to vote at this point. And so my vote is yes. Into your report, or you have?
Yes, into my report.
Okay. Okay. Public Works, Alderman Gillespie.
No report at this point.
Okay, Economic Development, Planning and Zoning Development,
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Alderman Spivey.
I'd just like to make a couple announcements. We have a couple of businesses that's coming to the Country Club Hills Mall Plaza. We have a Dusty's Kenny's Buffet that'll be coming soon. We have a cooking school that's coming, and a ATI school that's for a physical fitness for kids that may injure themselves doing sports. Into my report.
Okay. Insurance Risk Management,
No report at this time.
okay. Any report from the Special Committee of a whole for theater?
No report at this time.
Okay. Motion to open the floor to the public?
Motion to open the floor to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public, this is your opportunity to speak to the council.
Council, Darrell Gilton, Second Ward. I was curious regarding the, how was it resolved for the TIF funds that were inappropriately placed in the wrong account or whatever, and the gentleman came up? How was that resolved, please?
That was resolved. There was a transfer issue. At the time, the reason why the funds didn't get to where it was supposed to go is because you had a new treasurer and a new mayor, and we both had to sign documents in order for that transfer to take place. And so we've since done that. So the money went through.
Hi, Again, my name is Tom Melton. I just want to make a couple comments. I was very disappointed. Obviously, I got my tax bill in the mail. My taxes are on a constant appeal. I have an attorney in the city that does it for me all the time. And my taxes went up almost a third. Okay? The tax rate for Country Club Hills is 24.9%. That is insulting. That is rape. Okay? And every one of you guys know it, and ladies, everybody, okay? And I haven't seen anything done to really try to get that down. Seriously, to try to get it down. That's one of the highest tax rates in all of the southern region. Okay? And then I look at the budget, not in any detail. Then I see there's a raise in for the aldermen. There's a raise for your committee fees that you guys get. That's ridiculous. Okay? Because when the election was going, one of the biggest things was pay. So how do you have a job that's part-time, making over $30,000 a year part-time, plus you're getting extra for going to these committee meetings, and now you're getting a raise, when you know the public doesn't approve of it? It doesn't make any sense. You're getting a raise, and my taxes I'm getting killed. It doesn't make any sense. You know, I'm paying just under $10,000 a year in taxes in a home that was built in the early 50s. Tell me that makes any sense. And then everybody here is getting a raise.
Okay. Thank you. Well, yeah. I want to finish it.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Michael Fednick, owner of 17841 Princeton Country Club Hills. I've owned it almost 40 years. And recently, because of my age, because of my illness, I decided to sell it. The inspectional services checked it out, and the report came back for somewhere around $3,000, $4,000, maybe $5,000 worth of work, and they asked me if I would do it. Well, unfortunately, 6 months ago, I had one of my kidneys removed. I've been in the hospital 3 times. I'm not out of the woods as yet. And the property was appraised at $95,000. I have an offer of a speculator, whoever it is, for $50,200. I'm willing to let it go because I cannot manage it or fix it up or do anything to it. At my age, I have too many issues. And I would request Your Honor, Mayor, and representatives that you would consider the purchaser to put up a bond in order to just sell the property. Because it's vacant, they broke in, we had to board up the windows and so forth, and I just want to sell it. Would you consider this request on my part, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes. I think I made a decision on that this morning, and there was a bond that was requested for that property. Is that 17841, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Princeton? Yeah. This morning, we did accept a bond for that property.
God bless you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm very thrilled to hear that. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
You're welcome. Next.
Clifton Graham, 4920 Lake Court. Excuse me if I slow. Had to cut grass today.
That's a good thing.
Out a little bit. I had a neighbor call me last week. And, Facebook about the property tax increase of them 38%. Now, they live, I can go through my backyard, about 5 houses. So he said, Cliff, my property tax has increased $5,000 increase in his property tax. His property tax, $6,500 to $11,000. And I was shocked, not so much as the increase, and that he was getting over, because I've been paying $12,000. I've been paying for the last 3 years, maybe more, $6,000 more than he been paying. So I'm telling, come up to the city council, but at the same time, man, I ought to have you put in jail for the amount of money that I've been paying. My property taxes are ridiculous, and then to see somebody who don't have a senior citizen exemption, who don't have a veteran exemption, and got $6,000 less than me, been living in the community longer than I have. I've been living in the community 17 years. They've been living in the community 20 years. His tax has been $6,000 lower than mine. Even though he said my house, which it is, twice as big as his, we still walk down the same sidewalk. We still pay for the same school. I mean, I don't have any kids in school, but I did, but whatever. For my tax to be twice as much then is devastating. And for him to say, well, I can't stay in my home, well, I've been staying in my home, but it ain't right for neither one of us. So what I come to when I get a chance to look at the budget, and the first thing I say, well, I look for property tax decreases. I look for expenses reduced, a revenue increase, and I see in the end, it's a 43% increase in property tax. By the end, I said, no, that can't be right. And I said, the first thing our aldermen should do, because all of us are requesting it, get our taxes reduced. And then from this budget on, eliminate, besides the services, everything else. Because all we want is our taxes be done so we can remain in our homes. Somebody moved into a home across me, 1/3 of what I done paid for my house. Good, I'm glad they moved in. Good, that's good. But our property taxes are out of hand now. So the first thing I would ask City Council is we gotta say, let's cut these property taxes, and then everything else get cut. If my household lost income, I gotta cut expenses. When my property taxes doubled in the last 7 years, I had to cut expenses. I had to reduce car payments. I had to do whatever I had to do to maintain my property. You all are our leaders, and we want our property taxes to be lower. So let's cut the budget. But I see in here, we got $2 million to go toward a theater. $2 million for more seats that we're not even operating presently to get some money back. Now, it'd be different if we was operating and say, hey,
Mr. Graham.
I know I'm running out. Can I get an extension?
No, I'm just saying that this is not the budget hearing.
Well, I know, it's not a budget hearing, because this is going to be a
It's
budget.
next
Well, it's still citizens' time, and so the citizens' time get to choose what they want to talk about. So I'm going to talk about it today. I'm going to talk about it on the 20th. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. I'm going to talk about it until you all make a decision to properly represent me to reduce my tax. You continue to do it, because I see the same thing over and over again. So I know it's not so this is my time to talk about what I want to talk about, and I choose to talk about my taxes. And I just wish you all consider it, because I'm going to keep on paying on it, because I'm blessed to have nickels, okay? I'm working with my nickels to do what I can with my nickels. But, you all need to consider the residents. We want our taxes down, property taxes down. Thank you.
I have to correct you on the $2 million in the budget for the theater. I didn't see that in there, but that has nothing to do with the taxpayers' dollars. Those are all coming from TIF dollars, so just wanted to do that.
I'm still talking about. What about didn't you see a tax rebate that we supposed to be getting $2 million? Could you tell me about that, since we're talking about that?
Okay, next.
I want to make a comment about the budget. Mr. Melton, you're absolutely right. Graham, you're absolutely right. We've been at every one of these budget meetings that they've had for the last 2 months, taking copious notes, right about every single department head came to the table wanting more. Every single one of them came in wanting more. It was more help, more money, or more something. Nobody came to the table to say, I can make do with what I got. And each time I stand up and I tell these people, consider the citizens, consider the people. They look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, sit down. Nobody considers the the residents when it comes to this. One of our council people even had the nerve to say, and I won't call any names, well, since I'm not taking this and I'm not taking that, we can take that money and we can hire somebody in it. That's not decrease. That's still taking money, moving it back, and that shows up on our taxes. So I'm glad, Graham, because we stood there and I feel like we're the only ones in this whole city that cares about whether or not the taxes are raised. So what I recommend is next week, when you do that budget hearing, each of you should come, you should hold each of your respective aldermen accountable, and remember that each one of them sat there at campaign time talking about they were going to reduce taxes. They didn't say, they said they were going to reduce taxes, and reducing taxes started with the budget. So I didn't see a lot of reduction. I would suggest that all of you look at that closely, come in next week, hold your alderman accountable.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes, I want to piggyback off what the previous people, Jarrell Thomas is my name.
Thank you.
I want to piggyback previous what the people before me said about you guys got to do better with the financial conditions of this city, because right now you guys is forcing people to walk away from their homes. I mean, people, it's tough times. People can't pay these taxes. I mean, if you look around all the southern community, our taxes is ridiculous. They just keep climbing for what? We got to cut costs. We got to get our financial books in order. We can't keep paying high salaries, continue to do this. It's like if you had a husband and wife in a household. Before, you guys was able to eat out Fridays, Saturdays, you was able to afford this and that. One of the husband loses his job, you can no longer do that. It's sad that people spend half their life working, calling this city home, paying bills, and be here 10, 15, 20 years, and they forced out of their house because taxes is constantly climbing. And you guys, a lot of you guys might have 2 incomes or 1 income, whatever. People, you playing with people's livelihoods doing that stuff. You guys really need to take into consideration when you're making them decisions about the budget. I mean, it sounds good. We want this, we want to spend this, but think about that single mother. Think about that person that's retired, might be on a fixed income. It could be one of you guys. You have to think that way. You just can't keep passing this, spending money. Sooner or later, this city gonna be like a Dixmoor, a Harvey, and Robbins. It's just a matter of time. And it's gonna be because you guys making all the decisions up here. The residents, we're not making decisions. You guys, we entrust you guys. You guys gotta start putting the residents first. Sometimes you gotta make that tough decision, say, no, we're not gonna do this. Put the residents first. You guys gonna make this city it's just gonna disappear. And that's probably why businesses don't want to come here.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I'm Harry Evans, a resident here, also concerned about the taxes. Taxes have gone up, and it's just a shame that it continues to go up. There is some things that need to be done about these taxes. Even what was just passed here this evening, repealing the hiring freeze. Residents, please be aware what will happen when this moves forward. We have a mayor here that should be conducting this city as a city manager. We don't need another city manager. Be aware of what can happen with this hiring repeal. It's going to be more to pay out, and that's why your taxes are going up. They're continuously hiring more people, and more people they have to get paid. This is what's going on. Back a few months, we did elections. People talked about what they would do. Hold them accountable for what they said. The TIF fund, I had a question about that, and that is, you answered that earlier. There was that one particular gentleman that continues to come here, even though the TIF fund was found, or whatever the case, made it to its location. Has this gentleman been taken care of, so that he's not here consistently harboring over the meeting about his payout? That's something we don't need as a city. The last thing I'd like to talk about is being a commissioner of Parks and Recreation. I invite more residents, some residents, to please show up at these Parks and Recreation meetings, because I have I have the faintest doubt that no one knows what's going on here with Parks and Recreation. Absolutely no idea. So I invite more residents to come out and find out and know what's going on with these Parks and Recreation. And the last thing I like to say to you all is, if you ever heard of regentrification, think outside the box.
Anyone else? Will take one more. Unless there's other ones, I'll stay here all night if you want to talk, you know.
Hello, how's everyone?
We're
My
good.
name is
We're
Gray,
good.
Hosea Gray. Just a couple points, and what Harry was saying about the Park District. It's like a hidden thing here, and they want to be totally separate, but they are part of the city. There's nothing on the website about their meetings, when they're supposed to be, when they're held. There's nothing much on the board out there about it. So there should be something to let citizens know, and whether they'll come or not, but they should be notified that they are, because there's a lot of money going around there. There's a lot of money involved in the Park District. So that should be done. I have to piggyback with everyone else about these taxes. Mine went up, probably some of everyone else did. It's a two-edged sword. They, with the city, with their levy, and also with the county reassessing the value of your home. That's the assessed value, but the market value is still down there. So that hurts a lot, because you can't get rid of it. Even if you fix it up, you can't get much for it. So there's a two-edged sword here with the city, with the levies, and also with the county. Now, I advise people to get on the phone, get on the internet, and call the county too, because that 3-year deal is gone. That's why they did it again. And also to remind the city council that with that hiring freeze gone, it's still going to go up. The budget's going to go up because you're hiring more people. Now, I realize you may need more, and all the departments may say what they need, but the fact is, that money isn't there. And I even know the treasurer says $9 million that can disappear in a blink of an eye. So when you think about that hiring, you should think about what might happen if you continue to do that. The TIF money, there's more ways to use the TIF money aside for that theater. If you're gonna, let me back up a little bit. If you're gonna use the TIF money for the theater, there was mentioned by the committee, the theater of a whole, that they were doing different things to try to promote that, to get promoters for it and all that. Pre-sell it. If you can pre-sell it before anything happens, then things are already paid for. If you can't pre-sell it, then we're gonna have to build it and then hope things go good. There was issues discussed, but not the parking. If we put 2,500 seats in there, how would the parking be accommodated for the people that's coming? Other than that, people say that, well, we elect people, but I keep telling people all the time that when you elect an official, you're really giving your power to him. And other than that, you can't do anything besides referendum and all that. So you better think before you elect people about what you're doing, because once you do that, your hands are tied. Unless they want to do something, they're not going to do it. So, thank you.
Good afternoon,
Good
City
afternoon.
Council, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
I got two things right now, so I won't hop on the taxes right now. I would like to know, I know this $6.5 million, I know people say forget about it. I can't forget about it. I don't think the residents should forget about it. I think a couple months, Alderman Davis said that we had paid for it. It was all over with. But I'd like to know what's in place that this will never happen again. Because I see the budget continue to go up. I just want to make sure that we have something in place, that somebody knows what happens when money come into this administration or come into City Hall, that we know what happened to it. Because $6.5 million to lose, and the citizens, and that's all of us, had to pay that back. And so I would definitely like to know, do we have anything in place that's that we can say that that'll never happen again? I know we can never say never, but at least say that we got a handle on it.
Sure.
And as far as the theater goes, I just keep saying it over and over again. If we're gonna put $2.5 million in there, we better know whether or not we're gonna recruit that money. Because I keep saying, let's fix some roads, let's fix some streets. I think as a resident, I love to see my street fixed. Thank you.
Okay. Just a couple comments. The park board meetings, I'll make sure whoever brought that up, I'll make sure that they get on the board as an advertisement.
They've been scheduled to be on the board, but only 2 days
Down there.
before the meeting. I don't think that's enough time for residents to understand and know.
How much time do you want them to?
Hey, if it takes a week or two.
Okay.
You know, the people need to know what's going on in
Okay.
the date and time.
Okay, we have the board to, and you're part of the board. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me, ladies, gentlemen. Ladies, gentlemen. We're trying to hold, ladies, I can't answer the questions if you guys gonna talk back and forth. Mr. Evans, the board members, you guys get together and tell us when you want us to advertise your meeting dates, and we'll make sure that it happens, okay? And I'm gonna have John Murphy in a little bit to talk about the taxes, but I just want to say one thing about the hiring freeze. I understand, the consequences of the taxes in the city because my taxes went up also a tremendous amount. And so the hiring freeze, we needed to take it off the books. It doesn't mean that we're going to hire anyone that's not in the budget. And I refuse to hire anyone that's not in the budget, anyone that the council haven't given consent to. So it's not like your mayor's going to go out and hire a bunch of people. That's not the case here. And yeah, there was, I think, one person that I know that was hired during the hiring freeze, and that was the HR person. And the reason why that person was hired is because we were paying $140,000 a year for a company to be in here to do that for us, and we saved a little money by hiring a person to do it for us. And I think that was a good business sense. But there's no intentions to go out and hire a bunch of people. In fact, when we find out what Springfield is going to do, you probably will see some cuts in the budget significantly based on the revenue that's coming in. And that will happen as soon as we find out what's going to happen in Springfield. That's just one of the things that we're looking at. Secondly, I want to let you know that we have our policies in place, and we have guidelines in place that will not allow us, and I can't say never, but we will try our best not to allow any dollars to go through the crack or walk out the door like the $6 million we had. We have GWA that's in the house, and that's Mr. Gonzalez that's sitting right there. They monitor the finances for us and make sure that everything is accounted for. And so that's what we have in place to counteract that. And so, and also we have a new treasurer here that's also involved in accounting for the funds. So we have two mechanisms in place to make sure that that will not happen again. Okay, just wanted to answer that. I think that was all I wanted to say. Were you, did you have something you wanted to say, Dave? Okay, come on out. This is.
Let me just make a motion to close the floor to the public.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, come on up. And then we will have the attorney also to address the tax issue. Thank you.
Good evening. I do apologize for running late. I did have another public hearing meeting for another client. What we're giving you today is the tentative budget for Country Club Hills. And I just want to go a little bit over what a tentative budget is. This is not the final budget. This is all the discussion that other department heads have had, putting in their request. We worked on the revenue number based on last 2 years, we started really looking at what the real sales tax dollars were coming in, how much was coming in from income tax. So we put in the revenue items there. So now we will start the discussion again in terms of where we need to start looking for some cuts. Right now, we do notice that we do have some shortages that we have to start looking in terms of workman's compensation. It seems to be getting high. Insurance for group insurance. So those are the things that we can't really kind of see exactly what the actual cost is. So we're going to start pulling that over the next week. But we did provide a little bit more of a summary toward the front. It's a little different than I believe what you posted up before. But I am up anytime that anybody wants to call me to go over those numbers. But this, again, I just wanted to make it real clear. This is not the final budget. This is the starting point. We're about 90% there, trying to get the budget balanced. One of the things that I have heard is about the increase in property taxes, and I just want to Mayor that I've had the same issues
Yes.
back in Chicago Heights, and one of the things that we learned real quick is as soon as we can get current with all these financials, getting our audits. I did miss the auditor, but we did get a qualified opinion, so we're going in the right direction. But as soon as we can get all these filed, then there's the opportunity to start looking at a refinance of the bonds, not to go out and borrow more money, but how do you refinance?
Cut the
and
debts,
the
yeah.
savings, you swap it with the property taxes.
Yes.
That's something that we were successful in Chicago Heights, and it could work here, but it
Yes.
won't work until we get the finances up to date.
Right.
Again, I just wanted to let the board know that this is a tentative one. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, David. Any questions for David? Okay. Attorney Murphy? Well, he did already, so.
Good evening, everybody, and I hope you take a couple of notes, because what I found Friday regarding taxes was surprising to me, and to some extent it dovetails into what several of you said regarding the high taxes. Let me explain another part of the problem, not just for Country Club Hills, but for all of the south suburbs. Friday morning, I got a phone call from the mayor who had gotten his tax bill, and he said, I know that the city council has not passed an increase in property taxes for a number of years. Right, Alderman?
That's correct.
Not increased the property taxes in a number of years. How in the world, the mayor said, can my property taxes attributable to the city of Country Club Hills go up 35%? I know, just from what I read in the paper, that our two school districts have not had any huge tax increases. How then, the mayor said, can my property taxes for 160 go up by 40%? How in the world can my property taxes for Rich High School go up by 34%? All of you have gotten your second installment bills, and it's pretty easy to do the math, because the tax bill says 2013 on the far left, 2014 on the far right. So I did a little bit of digging, and part of the problem, folks, deals with the tax base. Let me explain three separate concepts, if I may. One is the tax levy. Now, that's what the city council does every year, saying that for property taxes, we want X millions of dollars. And for the last at least 3 years, I think, the property taxes have been flat. So we levy what's called an amount for property taxes. The other concept we need to understand is, everybody's heard the term EAV, or Equalized Assessed Valuation. There's something that you receive for your house that's called EAV, which is how the county values your property for tax purposes. Now, for a homeowner, it's basically like 1/6 of your actual market value. Some people appeal the taxes, saying that what the county says my house is worth is way too much. The city has an entire EAV. Okay, you're with me? So all of the property in Country Club Hills has a value, which the county puts on it. And the taxes that are assessed by all of the taxing bodies from the city to the Park District to the two school districts to the community college to the Cook County MWRD all get applied against the EAV. The bigger the tax base, the smaller the taxes. So if we happen to have an auto factory here, that would increase our tax base tremendously, and that would keep the property taxes low. We don't have an auto plant here, and not only that, I'd like you to write down these numbers. I know at least one of our members of the audience, well, our de facto secretary here, she'll write them down. In 2010, I just went back 4 years, folks. I think the word will be even worse if I go back a couple years farther. The crash hit in 2008, right before the presidential election. So the effects of the crash, meaning the huge drop in property values, started to feel itself a couple years later as people tried to sell their homes and supply and demand hit. In 2010, the city's overall tax base was $301,826,484. So approximately $301 million was the size of our tax base in 2010. In tax year 2014, the most recent year where the county has given us our total EAV, Country Club Hills EAV is now, or most recently, is $181,447,000. The tax base in this town, just in the past 4 to 5 years, has shrunk by 40%. So it's between you and the elected officials as to how to cut the budget. But the problem of this area, the problem of the south suburbs to a large extent, is that not so much that the local governments are asking for a ton of more money, because they're not. A big part of the problem is that the property values here have crashed and they haven't come back yet. Those of you who, you had the poor gentleman here who had a house that appraised out for 95 that he's willing to sell to a scavenger for 50.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Graham said you've got somebody who bought a house, who's buying a house for a third of what you paid for that, right? So, everybody wants low taxes, but and low assessed valuation, but that means your house is worth a lot less. Mm-hmm. So, this is a very bitter pill to swallow, and it is still. I'm sure all the aldermen encourage everybody to come to the budget hearing and bat it around. But you need to know that a bigger problem that forces all of us who pay more property taxes to pay higher and higher taxes is that the tax base, not simply in Country Club Hills, but in the entire south suburbs, and I'm sure Mayor Gonzalez is dealing with the same thing in the Heights, has gone to hell, and it hasn't come back yet. And that's a problem. That's a global problem that these aldermen here have very limited ability to fix, because it relates to the laws of supply and demand. No, that's the biggest mistake. Let me explain. The tax rate is a function of the amount of money all the taxing bodies levy. Remember, Mr. Milton, taxing bodies levy amounts. They don't levy a tax rate. The rate is the result of dividing the amount of money all the governments want by the tax base. That's what produces the rate. I mean, the worst of all is Park Forest. If any of you have ever looked around Park Forest, their housing values have really gone down tremendously, and they've got nothing in terms of sales tax, very little sales tax, no industrial, no commercial, and you go online with the county clerk's office, take a look at Park Forest, it's really, really tough. They've got, I think, the highest in the area. So the city can't lower the rate. I mean, the city could, if the city lowered its property tax by 5%, which would take work. Mayor Ford's increase from the city might have only been 30% instead of 35%. So you can't just isolate one factor. And you can't simply isolate the amount of money that the local politicians are asking. It's also a product of the tax base, and I'm sure everybody's home, everybody in this room, let me ask it the other way. Anybody whose house is worth more now than it was worth in 2007, raise your hand. One person. Everybody else's home is worth less now than it was in 2007. That's not the fault of the alderman. That's the fault of the entire market crash this country's slowly pulling itself out of. But I just wanted to let everybody know that it's a much more complicated and unfortunately now long-term problem than simply cutting the municipal portion of the budget by 5%. Yes, sir.
When the mayors, when they get together, with the South Suburban mayors, when they come together, because it's not only, tax values, I mean, the values of the property are down, that they're tied to people's income and people's jobs too. And when they come together, are they making it known that because of what happened at the national level, that all this stuff is trickling down on us?
Yeah. Yeah, let me tell you what the South Suburban mayors have been doing. They've been banging this drum since even before the crash. And what the South Suburban mayors and managers have been saying for years now is that in our area, now remember, historically, South suburbs were built on two industries: railroads, steel mills, right? Every home built in Dalton, Cal City, South Holland, were homes that were built by guys working at the mills or working on the railroad. Both those industries are dead and they're not coming back. What we've been trying to tell the legislature is that, especially in areas like ours, property tax, property ownership is not the appropriate measurement of wealth like it was 100 years ago, right? And it's not the equitable way, it's not the fair way to fund education. It's why should education be funded out of the property tax? Why not out of something like the sales tax? That's what the South Suburban mayors and managers have been doing, even before the real estate crash hit, because we don't. It's a vicious cycle, because you'll hear about businesses coming into our area and saying, you know, we'd like to relocate here, but the taxes are going to kill me. It's a vicious cycle, you're right. And our leaders, both at the municipal level and at the regional level, are doing the best we can, but we're fighting against the people north and west. You know, you talk about Tinley and Orland, what about Elk Grove Village? Right? What about the towns along the Stevenson, the Bolingbrook, that have this tremendous industrial tax base? We don't have that, we're not going to get it.
So is that a reasoning for the outlet mall not to come here as well, because it hasn't showed up in more than 5 to 7 years? This has been discussed.
What?
They don't want to pay the high.
Well, we haven't heard much from them in the last year or two. What I was told is that it was due in part to the real estate crash, but for a slightly different reason.
Yeah.
That it deals with lenders. It used to be that real estate had value for people to borrow money against, right? Collateral. Now, lenders, industrial commercial lenders, see real estate as worth zero. So the only way these malls can get the collateral to borrow money to build the thing is to get enough leases. So it's the leases that provide the value that that banks will lend money to developers on. That's kind of a general thing, but the outlet mall is going to be a challenge because of the property tax issue. Now they're in a TIF district, so virtually all the taxes would go to incentivize them anyway.
So other jurisdictions, it hasn't been a competitive thing for them to build everywhere else but here.
Tax dollars are not here. The income is not here.
Well,
I don't want to get into a whole philosophical thing about the outlet mall. I just want to let everybody know that it's not so easy then to tell the alderman, just cut the levy by 5%.
Right.
One reason why the aldermen should work extra hard to cut taxes where they can at the budget level, the school board, so with this EAB assessment, that means the aldermen should work even harder. Because I don't believe that the problem, I know it's an overall problem, but I don't believe you save $1 here and you save $1 there, that you still save money.
Every dollar counts, and in fact, there's a very good chance that the aldermen have been not increasing the property tax voluntarily for 3 years. Let me finish. It looks like there's a better than 50% chance that at some point when the Democrats and Republicans finally smoke the peace pipe, that one of the things that will go into effect is a property tax freeze for the next 2 years. I'll bet you $1 that at least in our area, if that tax freeze goes in, your taxes are still going to go up. Why? Because our values haven't picked up. That's why.
One of the things that I just want to bring up a point, the property values have gone down, the taxes have gone up, there's so many houses that are in disarray, they're not maintained in the city, okay, a bunch of club bills. But now they're going to increase everybody's taxes, so now people can even less afford to maintain their houses. So what do you think is going to happen at the end of the day? What's going to happen is we're going to be a heartbeat, because that's what's going to happen. Okay, because people are going to move out of their house because you can't afford to live there. And they're going to move out, there's going to be more vacant houses, more rentals, more crime, and it's just going straight downhill. So this council needs to do something about it.
And the reality of it is when we say, oh, it's always this way, it's this way all around the nation. If you look at the newspapers, if you look at the buildings, the property.
Okay, I'm sorry, we have closed the floor now. I was lenient and let you all talk back and forth. I mean, I was lenient. I mean, you know, come on, work with me, okay? Can you work with me? You know, I hope you got all your important questions answered. I didn't want to cut anybody off. I just wanted to work with you. But, you know, this discussion, we're going to have to come to a close on that. And, you know, we'll be here after we close the meeting. If you want to come up and ask questions, we'll try to answer as many as we can because we feel your pain. Remember, my tax went up 34%. So I understand where you're coming from, okay? And so I think, was that all you had?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, can I get a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, we want to do the automatic reports. And we'll start with Alderman.
Thank you. Glad everybody had a joyous and safe 4th of July. Don't forget to check on your neighbors. It's warm out, or just check on them because they might have a flood, all the rain we've had. Wow. Unbelievable. One thing good I can say, there's no one in town with brown grass. Everyone has green grass, maybe a little taller than it should be, but we all have green grass, and that should keep our water bill down, hopefully. End of my report.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Gillespie.
Yes, street sweep will take place this week, starting July 13th through July 22nd for the city of Country Club Hills. That's the end of my report.
Alderwoman Evans.
Yes. I pretty much enjoyed the conversation on the property tax discussion. That was pretty good. I just want to clarify a couple things or mention a couple things. One about the hiring repeal decision. I want to clarify that. As I mentioned before, we've hired people, so the hiring freeze, it was neither here nor there because we've hired people during the hiring freeze. What we need to do is hold people accountable, hold us as aldermen accountable for, are they qualified to do the job? Is the job necessary? If it is necessary, because we don't want to take away functions from residents that your property taxes are paying for, because that would become an issue. People would come and say, I'm paying $10,000, $12,000 in property taxes, and my public works function isn't functioning, or I come to City Hall and I can't get this done. So we do want to make sure that you're getting the services that your property taxes are paying for. So the question is the position necessary? If the position is necessary, are we hiring the right person for the position, and that it's not a nepotism hire? And what are we paying for this position? We've done our research, and this is what the market is paying for the position. If the person comes with higher skills, then you can negotiate that. If they don't, they fall within a certain range. Those are the questions that need to be answered when it comes to hiring. But again, I just wanted to clarify, we've hired people during the hiring freeze, okay? The other thing I wanted to mention as well is we've had several budget meetings and we've addressed some things, and I am very happy with the work that GW is doing in the department, the finance department, on the budget and, our finances in general. But I want to mention as well with the budget, the biggest parts of any budget, whether you're corporate America or you're municipal, is salaries and benefits. They're the biggest part of any budget. And so that is a very hard discussion to have. But you have to have that discussion if you're going to make an impact on any budget. No matter if you're Coca-Cola, Disney World, municipal, Harvey, here or anywhere else, as a company or a municipality, the biggest part of any budget is salary and benefits. So the discussion needs to be had around the table with everybody and everyone. Again, I want to mention that we don't want to put ourselves in jeopardy and not have services such as police and fire, because keep in mind, crime is increasing. So we don't want to put ourselves where it's not safe to have to live in our communities. So we want to make sure that we're finding balance with that. But we need to have discussions on, and I'll give you an example. Recently, have a discussion on a layoff. Not related to the city at all, but a layoff. That's a hard pill to swallow for anybody. You're talking about people's jobs, okay? I won't mention the company, but you're talking about people's jobs, people's livelihood, their ability to pay their mortgage, their car notes, send their kids to school, so on and so forth. That is a very hard discussion to have, and no one really wants to be put in that position to have that discussion. But it's either have that discussion, or the company doesn't exist and no one has a job. But here's an example of how it can work when you have a discussion. People get note of that, and you mention a few things, you start to do a few things that people take note of. For example, you may restrict pay increases to certain amounts. Okay, you normally as a company gave 3 or 5% increases for people every year. Maybe that goes down to 1 or 2%. Okay? Maybe you gave a company luncheon and you spent 10 grand on a company luncheon or Christmas dinner. Maybe you don't have one this year or next year, or maybe you just do something that's $2,000. The employees will start to take notice, and what they will tend to do is they will get together as a collective. If they're smart enough, they'll get together as a collective and say, what is it that we can do to help so that we have a job as opposed to having no job, okay? There are measures out there that can be taken, okay? Furlough days, volunteer furlough days. People like Fridays off. They can, if they know in advance, they can begin to budget throughout the year with furlough days. And they get together and decide, hey, if we all take some furlough days, we can all keep our jobs as opposed to a group of people getting laid off, okay? But the discussion needs to happen when it comes to that. But a large part of our budget is tied to very lucrative contracts, okay? Very lucrative contracts. For example, we have an officer with his own union contract, one officer in his own union contract. We have another officer who gets paid nearly a $10,000 pay increase every year. And then you're going to have the chiefs come and say they need to be above those officers just so that they have the title of chief, okay? But through the longevity increases and the step increases in those union contracts, you have officers making nearly $10,000 increases a year. Okay? Those are the discussions that we need to have. Those are the things that are tied to our budget, that are tied to contracts that are very difficult to change, okay? We had discussions and we changed the new contract so any new officer coming in the door doesn't start off making $80,000 a year. But what about all the officers on the force right now? Within 5 years, a majority of them will be over $100,000 apiece. That doesn't include overtime. Now multiply that by fire, and you see why we have the budget that we have, okay? You don't cut budgets with paper clips and reams of paper. That doesn't cut budgets at all. But we do need to have the conversations. We need to make sure that we're not making mistakes. Every little thing does count, so we need to make sure that $40,000 doesn't go missing over counters and wire transfers do not get lost. We need to have those conversations. We really do, and we need to monitor everything that we can, because everything does make a difference. It may not make a 30% difference in somebody's property tax, but it can make a small difference. I also want to mention, I received my property tax bill as well, and it also increased, although I got a few people that said there's decrease, but very slightly. But most of the residents have told me that their property taxes have increased. Mr. Murphy explained what could be the majority of the cause with that. So I'm saying that to say that I do feel the pain, because in addition to that, I put in for an appeal when the window was open, and just received a letter not too long ago that said, $0 decrease, you don't get anything, nothing, no decrease on anything. So you still pay your $12,000. And just don't want to forget anything. Someone mentioned something about the TIF for the theater seats, and I wanted to make sure that in mentioning of the TIF and spending the money for the TIF, it was mentioned that the TIF was not property tax dollars, and the TIF our property tax dollars. They're just allocated to the TIF fund and can be used for TIF locations. But they certainly do come from tax dollars, people's tax dollars. But I mentioned that to say, I think the conversation needs to be more had on fixing of the streets. A resident did mention fixing of the streets. I have some areas that are really, really bad, and I'd rather have a discussion on fixing the streets, and we did have that discussion, and it was told to us that we're not in a position to just have liquid money to pay for streets, and that we'd have to take out bonds to fix our streets. So keep in mind, we've been paying back the county $650,000 every time we get our property tax installment, but we haven't been able to use that $650,000 towards street repairs. And that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Alderman Spivey.
Yes, good evening. I will be having a 4-4 meeting July 23rd. That's set as Thursday at 7 p.m. from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the 175th Fire Department with Chief Rogers. It's for the 4-4, but everywhere is welcome to attend. Thank you. End of my report.
Okay, I just have to say that, yes, the TIF dollars does come from taxpayers, but it's designated funds, and we cannot spend those funds for anything other than what they were designated for. And so I just want you to understand that if we don't spend it for TIF activities, then we can't spend it for roads or streets or anything else. So just wanted to make that clear as well. With that, I need a motion.
To adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you want to speak to the mayor, come on up.